the Director of Alumni Relations, and I'm finishing up my 23rd year at Mercersburg. Somewhat interesting. I taught math for 18 years, and now this is my 5th year in this position. And, it's been really interesting the way that we've kind of changed our traditional regional event model to doing a lot of virtual engagement, and been able to bring the WeSpeak series online. And, I know it's a tough time, but I appreciate everyone taking the time to join us, and for other virtual events too. I encourage you guys to take a look at the virtual engagement page after this to see other programming. I think kind of in the next couple of weeks, there's some really interesting programming, including 2 alumni that are heavily involved in public health, kind of talking about the COVID-19 from a public health perspective. And I think that'll be really interesting, and I encourage people to check it out. But thank you, and especially thanks to Leigh for joining and sharing her story. Leigh's originally from Chestertown, Maryland, and she was a 4-year student at Mercersburg before graduating in 2010. While at Mercersburg, Leigh was a member of the softball team and the field hockey team. She has a Bachelor of Arts degree in Social and Behavioral Influences on Health from Gettysburg, and a master's degree in Public Health from the Brody School of Medicine at East Carolina University. She's a national board certified health and wellness coach with a passion for inspiring others to prioritize their health through all seasons of life. She's the owner of Define You LLC Health and Wellness Coaching, which she launched just in January of 2019. This is a business dedicated to helping people define individual goals and strategies that will help them live a healthy, balanced, and sustainable lifestyle. As a health coach, and through prioritizing and transforming her own health and wellness, it has become her mission to support others in putting their best foot forward in their own life. She currently lives in North Carolina, Greenville, North Carolina. And this session is part of our WeSpeak series, which was developed to help celebrate 50 years of co-education at Mercersburg and to inspire dialogue around issues surrounding gender equity in today's society. This session is going to be recorded for future viewing. Best practices seem to be for people to mute their microphone during the session. Leigh's going to talk for about 20 minutes and kind of share her story and her work, and then we'll open it up for discussion. She wants to make sure that it's going to be interactive, so be ready and to participate. I'll be monitoring the chat window, so feel free to use the chat window as if something comes up, and Leigh can kind of circle back to it. In my follow-up of this session also, I will make sure to include Leigh's personal email address that you can reach out to her also. But again, thanks so much, Leigh, and I'm going to hand it over to you now.
Sounds good. Before I get started on my presentation, I promise it's not too many slides. I just wanted everyone to introduce themselves briefly and just tell me what you're doing and why you decided to attend this session, just so I have a kind of a basis of where everyone's at. I don't know if Jason wants to call on people, or you want me to call on people. I'm fine with that too.
Leah, we'll start with you. Leah, go ahead.
With me?
Leah.
Oh, I was like,
I can start. Hi, Leah, it's so great to see you. My name is Leah Cook. I graduated from Mercersburg in 2015, and now I am here working as a regional engagement officer. So I work in the advancement office as well as the admissions office. So I had the chance to go and visit Leigh for dinner when I was down in North Carolina, and I'm really here. I was really interested when you were sort of talking at the beginning, when we were asking if you'd be willing to do this. So I've just been really interested in this topic and to sort of learn a little bit more about what you do. And I think it's great that we can do it in a discussion setting. I'm really excited. Thanks for having this.
Rebecca, how about you?
Oh, okay. So my name is Rebecca. I graduated class of 2013, and I'm a current med student. And I decided to sign up because, one, I have remained really good friends with Leigh, and two, I know about your business through like your social media platform, but I don't know if I've ever actually discussed your business really like one-on-one with you. And I just wanted to hear more about it and support a fellow Mercersburg alum.
Will, how about you? Well, yeah.
Me? Yeah, sure. So I guess what, year 19 for me here, but I'm here for a couple specific reasons. One is to see Leigh and hear from her. It's been intermittent that you've come back to campus and been able to see you since we were in Culbertson together. So I'm just excited to hear a little bit about how things are going for you, but also, I think that wellness and health are something that weren't really discussed at all when I was in high school. And so now, given that those are things we're discussing, as well as I have admittedly mediocre self-care, I thought it'd be a really interesting topic too. So it's good all the way around.
Sarah?
I guess I could just essentially repeat what Rebecca said. And I'm class of 2010. I'm a good friend of Leigh's, and I wanted to steal some of her tips. Right now in quarantine, I've been running a lot more. I'm a marathoner, and I was taking some time off prior to this to focus on strength training and injury prevention. So I've kind of been forced to go back to running at this point. So I'm here to steal any tips you have.
Justine?
Hi, I'm Justine. This is actually my first year working at Mercersburg. I'm the director of global programs and also a Spanish teacher. And I came here just looking at, Jason sent out an email about different WeSpeak webinars and conversations that were going to be happening. And this really spoke out to me, not to use a pun there, but I was just interested in, especially in quarantine, I've found myself kind of wanting to find new tips, and, there's so much information out there. So I wanted to hear really from an expert.
Holly?
Hi there, I'm Holly Trostel. I work in the alumni office, and I'm working with the class of 2010 on their 10th, what was supposed to be their 10th reunion here in June. But thanks everyone for showing up tonight. But also, yeah, wanted to just, we've talked about being mindfulness and being in the present. So any type of wellness tips that you are able to provide would be great, that I can pass along also to my colleagues.
Nikki?
Hi, class of 2011, so kind of overlapped and saw someone that I actually knew from one of these, so I thought that was cool, and the topic's super pertinent to today, so just wanted to sign in and see what it was about. Yeah.
And Alice? You might have just froze.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm having an unstable internet connection, so we'll see how it goes. I'm Alice Birch, and I graduated from Mercersburg in 1984, and I did go to my reunion last June, and it was really, really fun. So I encourage anyone to do that who has one coming up once we're past all of this. As far as the topic, it just sounded really interesting to me, and I'm being in quarantine all these weeks. It's just nice to sort of connect with some other people and get some interesting information. It reminds you the world is out there.
That's everyone, Leigh.
Okay, I was seeing if Jackie was going to go, but
Go ahead.
no. She's like, don't make me. Okay, I won't. All right, so I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to get this show on the road. All right, so this session tonight was a little different because it's going to be a little more interactive. I will share some basis of, information on health coaching and health behaviors and things like that, but then we'll really dive into a pretty active discussion. So what to expect in this session: understanding health behaviors and behavior change, a true definition of health coaching, the importance of creating routines, and finding balance in, health and wellness in your life, self-reflection and discovery, which we'll work through tonight, effective goal setting strategies, and then really interactive discussions, like I've said. So health coaching. There's a lot of different information out there about health coaching and what it is and what it isn't and what it involves. And it's a fairly new, but also really hot field over the past 10 years. And it's been something that people have done for a long time, but it's now getting more recognition, and there's further education on it and things like that. So this definition at the top is adapted from Duke Integrative Medicine. And it's really talking about health coaches and how they partner with clients to help them make long-lasting behavior change, which promotes your health and wellness and thereby enhances your well-being. We support clients in discovering ways to successfully implement your healthy lifestyle behaviors across the interconnected dimensions of our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. So it really addresses that whole person health approach and doesn't look at only your nutrition or physical activity, but all of the components of your health and wellness. The process looks like a client-centered approach that involves goal setting, navigating barriers, encourages self-discovery, and works through mechanisms for developing accountability and creating sustainable change. And I preface that because whenever it comes to making changes in your life, it really involves the behaviors that we make. And the top 5 behaviors for preventing the chronic disease that we see in this country is not smoking, getting regular physical activity, limiting your alcohol consumption, maintaining a normal body weight, and getting adequate sleep. And it's really crazy to think about those statistics because we know that those are things that are good for our health and good for us to do, but only 6.3% of Americans engage in all 5 of those things. So when it comes to behavior change, it can be challenging because it's like the balance of we know what to do and we know what's healthy and good for us, but it's the matter of actually doing it is where the bridge doesn't seem to align, right? And the information itself does not necessarily equal behavior change. So we can get all of the information and all of the resources in the world to be able to show us what is a healthy habit and what's an unhealthy habit. But actually doing those things is where it can be a really challenging move and a barrier at times. And people need guidance with that. So you need guidance on making sustainable lifestyle changes because there's so much information out there right now and we get inundated with all of these things that are good for us and then bad for us and then things you should do and shouldn't do and different diets and different, ways of being physically active and getting overwhelmed with all of that. So really understanding that when it comes to changing things in your own life, it's not a one size fits all approach. What works for someone, it might not necessarily work for another person. And so being, aware of that and knowing, not to get, frustrated and beat yourself up if something's just not working for you for sustaining that change. And not trying to, 1 minute say I've been waking up at 9 a.m. and now I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. tomorrow. It's just crazy thinking about how we want to get to a certain place, but trying to just throw ourselves all into that all at one time, we can get really overwhelmed and then not necessarily end up making those changes for ourselves. And the reason that I chose this topic tonight about creating sustainable routines and goal setting for maximizing your productivity and your health throughout the day is because we're creatures of habit, right? Routines help us find specific ways and times in which we can promote our health and wellness through structure, organization, and planning. So we know that the more we plan ahead with things and the more structure we have throughout the day, the higher likelihood that we're going to keep up with those routines and habits. And we don't follow those, any kind of routine, we can suffer from stress. So the whole, when will I get it done? There's not enough hours in the day, there's not enough days in the week. And it can lead to inadequate sleep because if we don't have a routine, we're playing catch up throughout the day. We might get behind on things and then we stay awake either worrying or we're doing work really late at night and then we're waking up later in the morning. So it's that cycle. Unhealthy eating habits. So if we, are not finding a routine that's working for us, it's more prominent that we're going to eat things like fast food or getting takeout because we haven't had time to think about groceries, let alone plan ahead of what we're eating throughout the day. Physical activity is also something that physical inactivity is something we can suffer from too, because exercise and workouts require some advanced planning, right? And whether it's advanced planning in your routine or all of a sudden you have all this time in the world, but you feel kind of paralyzed and saying, I have all this time, but I still can't find time to work out and kind of working through that. And then the last thing is, an ineffective use of your time. So I don't know about you guys, but I've had, days before where at the end of the day, I'm like, was I really that productive throughout the day? Like, what was going on? And when you're following a routine and you have those specific tasks lined up for the day, at the end of that day, you're like, I did this, this, and this. I'm feeling good about it. What's going on for tomorrow? So really having that routine and those goals set up for success to help you progress forward. And making your routine work for you. So I like to talk about this a little bit like I talked about earlier, where, it's not a one size fits all approach. You can look at what one person's doing and say, okay, that's going to work great for me. And if it doesn't work great, moving on and finding something that does work. Because like I said, what works for someone might not necessarily work for you. So you got to find a routine that works for you and your lifestyle and what's going on in your day-to-day activities. And you want to complete daily tasks around the same time each day. So what I mean by that is if you know that when you wake up at 6:30 in the morning and you exercise, whether it's walking or running or strength training or anything like that, if you exercise, shower, get coffee, and then walk out the door to work, you're feeling, more grounded and ready to take on your day. So completing those daily tasks that set yourself up for success is really important. And then also helping yourself, set yourself up for success. And what I mean by that is if you're wanting to work out in the morning, setting your clothes out the night before. If you're feeling rushed, getting to work on time and you're grabbing the coffee and you're getting the kids' lunches and you're getting your lunch and you're trying to figure out where everything else is, setting all of that stuff up beforehand, getting the, work outfit ready, getting the lunch ready, getting some of those things prepped so you can just grab them and walk out the door is going to help you stay on track and stay on routine. Do I have any questions on that? I know it's really brief and I kind of quickly went through that, but I didn't want to spend the whole time talking at you guys. But any questions on that before we dive into a discussion? I don't know if I can see. Eek.
Leigh, you said chronic illness. What's the definition of chronic illness?
So chronic illness would be anything like heart disease, diabetes, you have chronic fatigue, things like that. But when I'm really talking about like the statistics around your chronic illnesses in like this country, it's really around heart disease, obesity, diabetes, and things like that. So chronic diseases in their long term. So what it means by chronic is it lasts more than 3 months, which is how it categorizes itself as a chronic illness versus a shorter term. So a lot of those things, and like when I went through earlier on, if I can go back, like not smoking, physical activity, alcohol consumption, normal body weight, adequate sleep, those healthy behaviors will reduce your risk for heart disease, stroke, diabetes, the having, heart failure and things like that, and the way that your body is functioning. But yeah, the chronic disease is it lasts for longer than 3 months. And most of which are preventable. So things like diabetes and heart disease, I mean, some of it is a little bit genetic, but there's a lot of prevention that we can do when it comes to those things that we don't necessarily practice all the time. Any other questions? All right, I know you guys are saving up for the discussion we're going to have on your routine, so that's okay. All right, so for the rest of the time, what we're going to do is we are going to kind of do a self-discovery and discussion session on your current routine, what you would like it to look like, and what challenges you're having with bridging those gaps. So if any, one person wants to kick it off on what their current routine looks like. This is a safe space. There's no right or wrong answer.
I'm happy to share mine because I feel like I'm probably pretty typical of everyone. I'm working from home right now and probably will be through the summer and maybe the rest of the calendar year. And my routine has just been like thrown up in the air by not going into the office. I've been waking up around maybe 6:45 and then trying to get a run in before I start work. Usually like a half-hour run or something like that, with like a limited amount of time to stretch before I need to be online for morning meetings. And I'm doing a lot of sitting throughout the week. And I'm trying to get, little walk breaks in here or there, but there's really not a lot of physical movement in my life right now, outside of like me going outside of my house on purpose to do that. And some days I can take an hour-long lunch break to get off of my computer. Other days I'm, fitting in a half hour between different Zoom meetings. And so, it's hard some days to get in more physical movement, and, finding different time, like I don't have a normal dinner hour anymore because my routine is a little out of sorts and out of my control. And in the evenings, there's limited ability to go do anything outside because that's when other people are outside and you don't want to be around them. And, there's not a lot of like great things to look forward to. So I am indulging in dessert more, of course. So that's my routine right now.
Hey, and there's no shame in that either, right? I mean, I don't think you're alone. And I know that, I can speak for myself that our current routine, now with all of everything going on isn't necessarily the same as it was 6-8 weeks ago. And it isn't necessarily the same over the past 3 weeks. It's something that's kind of changing all the time based on things you can and things you can't control. And thank you for sharing. Who would like to go next?
I can go. My husband and I, we got a quarantine dog. So, we were deciding on one before quarantine happened. Then, so we've been getting up earlier than we were getting up, which has been really helpful to jumpstart our morning, and thankful for that change in our routine. So we'll get up around 7:30. And we have a coffee maker, so we program it the night before so that we wake up and the coffee's already made. And then we'll go for a walk around back campus. We live in Fowl Hall, so that makes it really easy to go on a walk, and then come back and have breakfast. And then I'm online at 9 for office hours with some students. So it varies usually every day, is since we have a rotating schedule. I don't always have, maybe for example today my rotations didn't meet, so I had a lot more kind of free time. I don't want to say free time during the day, but I didn't have scheduled meetings or classes or things like that. And then once that afternoon office hours or department meeting or faculty meetings over, we usually do a workout, like a video that we find. Today I found it especially hard to kind of get myself motivated because, it was more staring at a screen and not talking to other people since I didn't have class or any meetings today. And then we'll walk the dog in the afternoon, come back and have dinner. We usually have dinner around 7 or 8. And then now it's kind of our wind down time before getting ready for bed and getting ready for the next day.
Okay. So it sounds like not feeling 100% upended, but on some days feeling like, what am I supposed to do at this time? How do I stay motivated? How do I keep on track?
Definitely. And I find that when I do have more meetings and maybe an hour here and then another meeting or a class, I'm way more productive than when I have from 10 to 3 open. You try to eat lunch at the same time, but then I'm like, oh, well, I could do it later and things like that. So that's been challenging for me during this quarantine.
Yeah, and there's not the accountability of really anything else other than set meetings, obviously. Then it is like one day you are having lunch at 11 o'clock, the next day you're having lunch at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You're like, where did the past 4 hours go? Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else want to go?
I'll jump in for a second. This is a different answer I might have given 6 months ago, obviously with the pandemic here. But for me, what's boarding school life can be so 24/7, but what's nice about it is that with classes, you can put on a teacher hat, and then back to the office, I have administrator hat, and I walk on home and I'm dad hat or spouse hat, whatever. But here, all the hats are on at the same time. And so that's what throws my schedule way out of whack during the day is I've got, a daughter in 10th grade at the academy trying to finish out the year. Molly and Leah's just been accepted for next year, right? But she's got middle school stuff she's got to do. And Betsy's getting peer group ready for next fall and stuff like that. So I find I just run around like a chicken with my head cut off all day long, pants on fire. And it's only about now when things are winding down that I get a little time to myself. But usually then I get suckered into YouTube or something like that, stay up too late, and then don't work out in the morning. That's my classic pitfall.
Hey, I mean, when work, life, and everything else is then settled into one spot, I mean, it can be really challenging to have that space and have that time and place for not only yourself, but your work and your family and everything else, and just having that space to not really do anything and feeling like that's okay too.
Yeah.
Leigh, when you were talking about days when you get a lot done and you feel like you were organized and you that feels good, and you're happy about it. I'm always surprised that when I sometimes think back and like, oh man, I did a lot today, and then I actually then feel guilty because there are other days when I do absolutely nothing, and so I don't quite understand how that can be. That some days I'm able to get so much done, and then other days, like I literally don't leave. Quarantine or not, I made my bed, and that's pretty much the only thing I can list as my accomplishment. So I'm always amazed how in the same 24 hours, sometimes I can get a lot done, and other days I don't do much at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question right there, right? I mean, that's how life is. I mean, we're not going to always be motivated each and every single day to do the same thing and wake up and do our, same routine. But it's about finding those core habits. Like you talked about, like making your bed and how like that's like the accomplishment you felt for the day, but you didn't feel accomplished with that. You made your bed. You got up, you got out of bed, and you made it your bed. So what made you do that versus not making it and not doing that for the day? And how you can progress forward throughout your day like that. So it's thinking about it in like positive psychology versus negative, or, what allowed you to do that, which is a positive thing versus not doing that. Sorry, that was a loaded question back.
Sometimes I don't make my bed either, full disclosure. So
I will say that over the past 6 weeks, I have intentionally decided that I'm going to make my bed every single day. And it's been working well. And even on the days that I don't want to make it, I make it. And there's something about when you get up and you've accomplished at least one thing right when you get out of bed that helps you have a more positive mindset throughout the day. So I'm a firm believer in like, don't beat yourself up if the bed's not made every day. But if you do make the bed when you get out, it's like you've had your first win of the day for the first 5 minutes you've woken up.
There was a great graduation speech. It's probably almost 10 years old now, but it's like listed as like one of the great graduation speeches, but it really was about making your bed and the importance, and a lot of what you were saying, it being a routine and, the feeling of accomplishing something right away in the day. And then at the end of the day, it's always nicer to get into a made bed, and I think about that, something so simple like that. And but I feel like it's a lot about what you're talking about, this routine and doing things that are good and feels good and celebrating small accomplishments and things like that.
Yeah. Celebrate everything. I mean, I get excited after I make my bed because I'm like, yes, like that is a win for me right there. And I'm interested when I'll even journal sometimes about it, where on the days when I had made my bed, when I first started kind of being more intentional about it versus the days I didn't, I found that my day was more productive when I did that, because you're, like you said, you're either starting your day off with something that you've accomplished, so it's a win for you, or you're starting your day off and you're like, man, I didn't even make my bed today. Like, what's going on? So it's all about the intentional mindset that you're setting for yourself.
Well, you mentioned about journaling. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So what I like to do is I like to do brain dumps. So what which helps me find clarity and focus to stay on task, for a routine throughout the day. So I will give myself time to brain dump. So I'll write down, like, if I'm thinking about in the house or different things I want to do in the business or blog posts I want to write, I'll write it all out on a word dump and a brain dump. So they have a space and they have a place, and I can move on and focus on the other things that I have set to do for the day. And journaling, what I do with the journaling is I write every morning, which I guess I have it here too. But every morning I write 5 things I'm grateful for, which helps me set myself up for, happiness and feel goods. And that I cannot take credit for, because it came from Rachel Hollis, who is a podcaster / author / like life coach and motivational speaker that I follow. And I started doing that in my journal, and that helps, especially during a time when there's so much uncertainty and things you can't control. So I journal 5 things I'm grateful for, and her requirements are, it has to be within the past 24 hours, and it can't be like, I'm grateful for waking up in the morning. It's got to be like a really specific thing that's happened to you in the past 24 hours. So like, I will write things like, the Amazon delivery driver dropped off my package on the side door versus the front door, and I actually figured out where it was at. Things like that I know put a smile on my face, and I know make me happy, and I know I can go back to it when I'm having not so good of a day. So that's kind of what I was talking about with like journaling and just writing out your thoughts. Because when we have all of our thoughts up in our head, it can really mess with our productivity and our mindset, and then our emotions and how we're feeling. And if we can put it in a place and have a space for it, it's like there's a weight lifted off your shoulders, because you know that you've had time to think about it and reflect. I hope that maybe answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
I started journaling when we first, and I would be like, COVID-19 day, whatever. And after a while, I just got like tired of it. I just kind of like would skip several days, but maybe just focusing on like 5 short things, that I might be able to stick to that better.
Yeah. When I first started doing it, I noticed that first week it was probably 4 days I did it. Second week it was probably 4 days. Then it went to 5 days, and now it's become like an everyday thing. And giving yourself that grace of like not beating yourself up about something that's supposed to give you joy too, so not being like, why didn't I write my 5 things I'm grateful for, but just being intentional and saying, okay, I know how I feel after I do this and how I feel throughout the day. So let me think about that the next time I'm thinking about whether or not I want to do this. So I know it's like a whirlwind of like mindset and behavior and like your attitudes toward not only your others, but yourself. But those are like the key components of behaviors and mindset, and changing, pieces of your lifestyle and building your routine. And they're not easy all the time either, but, and it takes time, which I think can be really frustrating, but can also give you a lot of gratitude and, a sense of achievement when you get to that like sweet spot of, this is my routine and I'm totally digging it and it makes me feel good. And I'm not going to beat myself up about the days that, aren't as great, because I know that I still have those core, habits in my routine.
Leigh, I have a question for you, or maybe for the group. And my internet is being a little spotty, so I hope I don't cut out. But do you feel like you recommend having just one routine that you follow every day of the week, or do you have like one for the weekdays and one for the weekends, or even just multiple variations of a routine that you might say like, oh, today is a morning workout day and tomorrow is an afternoon workout day, that sort of thing?
Oof. Well, when it comes to workouts, and I know it's probably not a popular opinion, but I'm a big proponent of working out in the morning. And I know obviously there are schedules that can't happen. But there's something about working out in the morning that I think has so much value, not only for, your body and your health and your physical, wellness, but also your mental health. And I think boosting those endorphins and getting, that sense of like energy and strengthening right when first thing in the morning help set yourself up for, positive vibes throughout the rest of the day. Like when I work out in the morning versus if I work out in the evening, it just feels different to me because I'm not able to use that energy and put it forward to other things I'm doing. When it comes to like a routine, following the same exact thing every day, like Groundhog Day, I would say that your core components, your core habits in your routine should stay pretty, on time and on task, and be really similar most days, obviously, unless something is going on. What I mean by that is, waking up around the same time every single day. If you want to work out in the morning or if you want to work out in the evening, telling yourself, okay, this is what I want to do. And having those, main habits that help your health, your well-being, and your productivity. So if on the days where you wake up at 7 a.m., you exercise, shower, drink your coffee, and you're feeling like you're on task for the day and you're feeling more productive, then I would lean into those core components and not change those. But from what I can tell from the current routines that you guys have discussed about, it sounds like things kind of ebb and flow, right? But there are certain core components to a routine that I think should always stay fairly similar. I hope that answers your question.
Leigh, how about, I think that there's something to be said for flexibility. And so you have to find a balance somewhere between having a schedule and also being flexible. And I mean, certainly COVID-19, if people that were very strict on their schedule and then have had to readjust it, that can be very disruptive to people. And I'm sure that's kind of the other side of it. So how do you find that balance of allowing yourself to be flexible, but also, getting the benefits of having a schedule?
Yeah, I think, you have to always be flexible because there are things that are going to happen in life. And they're like with this pandemic, I mean, obviously majority of people everyone's been impacted in some way or another, right? You're either working less or you're working in a different space, or you might be working more, or you might not be working at all. You're home with the kids, everyone's at the house, so obviously your routine is going to look way different, and it might look way different on a day-to-day basis. But when having the flexibility, but also planning ahead, I think can be like that double-edged sword, like you were talking about. So, giving yourself the freedom to feel what you're feeling right now, especially during, a pandemic and the uncertainty that brings. But also leaning into the things that are good for you and, pushing yourself to do those things. So that's where I kind of stand on that. So being flexible, it doesn't have to look like every single day you're doing the exact same thing at the exact same time. But if that there's certain things that you do at certain times where you're most productive and you get the most success out of and the most happiness and joy and benefits out of, then I suggest that you lean into that and follow those times. So if you're more productive when it comes to work, if you're more productive in the morning versus the afternoon, maybe scheduling your time for that in the morning. So scheduling your work time in the morning, and then maybe scheduling time for yourself in the afternoon where you're not as productive in terms of tasks and things like that. And then leaning into how you're feeling each day too. With the season that we're in right now, I mean, every day is a little different because every day is a day that we're not 100% certain on what's going to happen next. And every day is a day longer that some of us are at home. And giving yourself space to feel those feelings, but not allow them to keep you stagnant, and not, and prevent you from progressing forward. So it's really about, your mindset and not like beating yourself up and getting upset with yourself and mad about productivity and, routine, but just leaning into what feels good every day and, pushing yourself to do some of those things that have the most benefit. Does that make sense? And I know it's easier said than done. It's just one of those things where it takes time. And you really have to be willing to give yourself and your health time, to adjust to certain things.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm just trying to think, it's going to be hard. I tend to be pretty laid back and kind of go with the flow and try to be able to find a balance of that being who understanding that's who I am, but also being able to have the benefits of having a schedule.
Yeah. So with the schedule, okay, so with the routine that you had, touched on earlier, what would your ideal routine look like for you? So your current routine right now, and what ideally would you like to have in your daily routine? It doesn't have to be at an exact time, but say, I want to ideally exercise, walk my dog, read for 30 minutes, kind of the core components. What would you ideally like to have in that routine?
Is that a question to me or a question to the group?
A question to you, but I'm suggesting that maybe the group think about it while you're answering, about what your current routine is and the habits. So, when I talk about routine, it doesn't have to feel like you're doing the same, mundane tasks every single day at the same time, because you still want to find joy out of them. But, reflecting on what has remained the same and, throughout your routine in this time, because obviously everyone's schedule is all over the place now. So what habits have remained the same that happen throughout the day, and what have kind of slacked off that you wish were still there?
Yeah, I'll have to think about that a little bit. I think I've I'd like to say I haven't exercised, but I think I've been missing that routine pre-COVID. It's just been hard. There's certainly having young kids makes it an added challenge, and things kind of add up, and then before you know it, it's been a year before you've gone, since you went for a run last or something like that. So I'm not quite sure I'm going to be able to say what I feel like I'm missing right now. Maybe someone else will be able to share.
Hey, that's okay too. I mean, it takes a little bit to think about and reflect on what you're wanting more of in your life and what you might be wanting less of. And if someone wants to help you out and jump in, that's cool too.
Yeah, I think what I'm kind of missing overall in my life is a sense of predictability. And I know that sounds really like silly, because my life is in big terms very predictable right now. It's living in my house all the time. So that's pretty predictable. There's not a lot of like different factors, but in terms of like schedule and even like I'm a big person who plans a lot of things to look forward to in the future, like vacations. And this whole summer, there were lots of things to look forward to that are now all canceled. And like not having that predictability on a lot of different levels is a big challenge. But, like thinking about routine, there are some, like if I can give myself as much predictability, especially with like remote work, like work can be really unpredictable when you're in a digital environment where lots of meetings are getting scheduled all the time, and it's very frantic because there's a lot of change overall and a lot of unknown. Something that we've started doing in our office a little bit is putting on our schedules blocks of time when we are not available to meet with people. And I'm realizing now as you're talking that I haven't been doing a ton of that. And maybe I need to be doing more of that, making myself less available on my calendar for those things so that I can focus and give myself, maybe it's not always possible, but maybe afternoons or meeting times and mornings are task times, or trying to give some sense of predictability there. So.
Yeah. And I love what you said about, blocking out time where you're not available. Because I think that a lot of people struggle with that, with wanting to make sure that you're not going to, take off anyone if they're like, we can't meet at 2:30 in the afternoon, or, and knowing that you need that time either for yourself and doing things for you, or doing other things, that you want to do throughout the day. But yeah, blocking out time where you're basically saying, this is my time, it can be really hard, because it's basically saying no. It feels like you're saying no to someone when you're really saying yes to yourself and your productivity and your focus. But it can be a challenging conversation, especially when people are like, wait, why is your time blocked off? I'm just saying, you know what? That's me time right there. Would anyone else like to jump in and talk about their ideal routine versus what they've talked about in their current routine? I'm trying to scroll through to make sure I'm hitting everyone. I can't see everyone in like one panel.
I think this is Holly, for those of us here in Mercersburg and Pennsylvania area, it's really, the weather has just been so crazy. And I feel like some days that it's so windy and cold, you just don't even want to go outside. And so then it just feels like, okay, that day is gone already. And it's now going to be a new morning. And it's, my routine would be different if it was about 60 degrees or 70 degrees, even better. But I feel like I'm staying inside, so I'm closer to my computer. I'm answering emails into the evenings, things like that. So that would definitely, I think warmer weather would definitely change my routine.
Yeah, weather can definitely impact that. And, finding things that give you that energy that you find outside, walking, and, physical activity, outside. What can you do inside on those days that still give you that same sense of enjoyment? Is important, I think. Having a plan B, like, okay, it's gonna be 70 degrees tomorrow, but then it's gonna be 30 degrees apparently in Pennsylvania and snowing in May. So, finding something to do that you're gonna find enjoyment out of over that inside, when it's cooler. And yeah, and I think I had another thought, but I forget. It was off of Sarah, and you said, oh, answering emails and texts and things when you're closer to your computer and your devices, and feeling like you have to respond, in that moment, giving yourself those hours, kind of what Sarah was talking about with maybe I need to, block off time, where I'm not available for things. Setting a time in which, obviously, like if an emergency happens, you have to answer your phone or an email, but setting a time where you're like, okay, this is when I'm not going to respond to any more emails until the next day. And I'm not going to respond to emails or texts until this time in the morning. Because if you set that precedent up for yourself and for the people who are contacting you, then they're less likely to send you emails at 10 o'clock at night, because they know that you're not going to answer until the next day, or like 5 o'clock in the morning. So setting some kind of like ground rules for that too, because when we are working at home, for some of us, it's been a couple of months. And for some of us, it's an everyday thing, working from home and finding those boundaries, because if you don't, delineate those lines, it can be overwhelming, because you always feel like you're working, and you always feel like there's that, frustration of I'm working, but I'm at home and I want to relax and I want to spend time with my, family and my friends and things like that. But I can hear my phone, ringing, or my email pinging, and it gets really overwhelming and stressful. So basically shutting it off and putting it away and giving yourself time where it's not even, you're not even aware of any of that. I hope that's helpful. Does anyone else want to reflect on what they'd like their current routine to look like, or some components they wish they'd have back in their new normal?
I'll go. I am a mom of 2 young children, ages 3 and 4 months. So my routine already got blown up when I had a second child. So the newborn fun of keeping track of littles everywhere while trying to work from home, while my husband works from home, A normal day lacks routine. And as a type A person who is a list person, schedule driven person, it's a bit chaotic in our house. And we have a side business of a farm. So what our normal is eating, my husband and I eating dinner at 9-10 o'clock at night after we've gotten kids to sleep, and finally having time to meal prep or, come up with a plan. So I actually just think I need to get better about trying to plan out my day the night before, just creating my lists the night before, top goals for the day. I think that would probably make me feel a little bit less panicked each day when I feel like I'm not getting certain things done. And as Holly mentioned, I'm not the best person at unplugging, especially coming off of maternity leave. I feel like, there's an added pressure of trying to get things done and check things off and being available to everybody. So just reminding myself that it's okay to unplug and put things away for a while is totally fine and acceptable.
Yeah. So it sounds like you have a lot going on, but and that you are, a to-do list and a task-oriented person, and, blocking times when focusing on the things that you can control and knowing that there's a whole bunch of variables that you can't, and finding those like golden nuggets of time where you're like, I can control what's going on right now, like in the evening. So you found, productivity in that for meal prepping and doing things, even though it's not the ideal time, it sounds like, for you to do that, wanting to do it a different time, but working with what's going on in your season of life too. Does anyone else want to talk about their current routine and what they'd want it to look like? I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity. Okay. So out of looking at your current routine and what you ideally want it to look like, I challenge you to pick one of the biggest challenges you're having, and we're going to work through goal setting on how to overcome that challenge and that barrier. So there are 5 goal setting strategies that I, have found that create effective routines. And like Jason was talking about earlier, it doesn't have to be, you're doing the same exact thing every single day. And you want to have the freedom to have space where, you're doing things that aren't necessarily scheduled or on the calendar, and have that space where you're kind of doing your own thing. But when it comes to challenges that you're having, and tasks or habits that you would like to incorporate back into your routine with everything that's been going on, so talking about wanting things to be a little more predictable, or wanting to spend more time outside, or wanting to unplug a little bit, finding that one big challenge that you're having and troubleshooting through goal setting to overcome that challenge. So the 5 strategies that I suggest when goal setting are creating SMART goals. And I'm sure some of you guys have probably heard of SMART goals before, but they're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So, if you set a goal of, I want to exercise more, versus I want to go for a walk 2 days a week for 20 minutes, that's a really specific, measurable goal where that there's, tangible stepping stones in which you can kind of achieve those things, versus having that loftier goal of not having those specifics. And then putting it on the calendar. For my to-do listers and my calendar people and my schedulers and everything like that, putting things on the calendar, so if you have a big event coming up, or if you have a Zoom webinar and you want to, practice beforehand, putting things on the calendar, and putting workouts on the calendar, or blocking your time on your calendar, and anticipating barriers. So, I don't think that any of us could have anticipated a barrier like a pandemic in 2020, but, some of the challenges that have come out of that time, troubleshooting those challenges and barriers. So, working from home, maybe you're not feeling as productive, or you're feeling distracted, or there's kids all over the place. How can you overcome those barriers to keep, with your routine and your habits that you find are most successful for you in terms of your health? and leaning into the process. So, we've talked a lot about tonight of how it's challenging to do certain things and, feeling pressure from, other people or, meetings or, feeling like you're not as productive and getting frustrated with that. And, it's all about the mindset, but it's all about the process and progress over perfection. So it's not going to be a walk in the park every single day. I mean, certain days you're going to it's going to be the end of the day and you're going to be like, I made it today. Like, this was an awesome day. And then the next day might not feel as great. And that's okay, because that's life. And that's the way humans work. It's the way our mind works. But leaning into that process and giving yourself that grace to feel how you're feeling, but also, progress and push forward is really important. And then finding an accountability partner. So I'm a big proponent of this, because when we set goals and when we set routines and we set, habits that we'd like to change to better ourselves, especially when it comes to our health, if we don't tell anyone about it at all, and we're struggling with it, and we find that, it's been really challenging for us, or we find that we've fallen off, there's that person there that can support you, right? If you have that accountability of, hey, did you go for that walk today? Or, hey, did you unplug last night, and how'd that feel? So if we don't have, a little bit of accountability and support along these, processes of change, it can be really challenging when times get a little tougher. So those are my biggest tips for goal setting and routines and all things wellness. And I hope I've given you guys enough time to think about some, goals and challenges that you've had over the past several weeks and what you'd like to do moving forward to, overcome those challenges and barriers.
And that, good timing, Leigh. We're, trying to stay mindful of people's time always, and we're just about at the hour. So, again, thank you, Leigh, and thank you to everyone else for coming and sharing their story and taking risks and being so willing to participate. Again, I'll include Leigh's email in the follow-up, if you have any questions about and want to reach out to her. And again, on Thursday of this week is going to be the final of the WeSpeak series, and there are two alums, June Marquis Pryor, class of 2001, and Stephanie Turner McGraw, class of 06, and they're going to talk about the importance of gender equity in STEM education and why that's relevant to everyone. And so again, I encourage you guys to go onto our events website and check those out and other programming. But I always end each of these sessions. We're in a tough time now, and please take care of yourselves. And we're so excited to be able to see you once we get on the other side of this virus. So have a good night, and thanks again for making it out.